Now here's a pub quiz question for us. If you got a bunch of archivists and historians, novelists and trivialists together and made a pub team out of them, pub quiz team, you'd think they'd come tops because they know everything about everything. But I've heard it said that occasionally they get together and they come bottom. What do you think of this?
That's right. I mean, I've met up with two friends, one of which is Chris Wynn behind this podcast, and Mark Mason. And between the three of us, we've got, 30 or 40 trivia books. And we came last in the Prince of Wales pub quiz in Highgate, a fiendish quiz. And I think the reason, there are two. First of all, we were catching up with each other. But secondly, we were trying to out-nitpick each other on all of the quiz questions. Any quiz question has hidden depths to it, and our trivia brains were going crazy. And we were out nitpicking, and you need nitpick-proof questions, really, to get the nitpick. I can't do it.
Can we say that 50 times?
Nitpick. I've already had half a pint, and I've lost it already.
Welcome to TimeTable London, a podcast for lovers of London by lovers of London. We explore the brilliant byways and cosy corners of this fabulous city from a succession of illustrious and captivating old pubs. Today, we're coming to you from the Sherlock Holmes, just off Northumberland Avenue near Trafalgar Square. I'm your host, Tam MacDonald, and with my colleagues, the London historian, Dr. Jessica Borga, and King's College London senior archivist, Dr. Geoff Browell, we invite a series of remarkable guests to be captivated along with us. Jess and Geoff, welcome.
Hello, Tam.
Hello, Tam. Yeah, I was part of a pub quiz team once, and Holly Johnson was a regular from Frankie Goes to Hollywood. He was great. Oh, he could answer all sorts of unlikely questions. That's another story altogether.
Anyway, before Geoff sets off on another of his racy, indiscreet stories from the archives that we cannot possibly broadcast, it's time to introduce today's guest, who we just heard trying and failing to wrap his tongue around the phrase nitpick proof, but who nonetheless scores high on the register of relevant interests, Matt Brown. Editor-at-large of the online cultural bazaar known as The Londonist, Matt Brown boasts a fascinating profile I'd commend to all our listeners, and it nails his London street cred even without mentioning his current obsession with John Rocque's iconic London map of 1746, or his, and I mean Matt's, not John's, enduring dedication to the legacy of Sherlock Holmes. Welcome, Matt.
Hello, Tam.
What do you think of this pub?
I think it's a marvellous place. I mean, it's one of those pubs, I think sometimes it's kind of thought of as a tourist pub. You go downstairs, it's rammed with tour groups and tourists. But you come upstairs, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but there's an amazing tribute to Sherlock Holmes in the upstairs room that I don't think many people know about. I do like coming here.
Well, for our listeners at home, why don't you describe that lovely display for us?
Well, you come up the stairs and it looks like any other upstairs to any other West End pub. But then you turn a corner and through a window you glance through and you see Sherlock Holmes in profile. Behind him is his study, all kinds of artefacts on the walls. Things from the stories of Sherlock Holmes. You find a series of Napoleon busts from the story that has those in. The Red-Headed League, there's a red wig in there. If you know your Sherlock Holmes, you can spend hours at that window just picking out the different details. And it's a remarkable display. I mean, it's been there since the 1960s. It was rescued from the 1951 Festival of Britain.
Is it from the Festival of Britain?
It is. It's a real cultural artefact in its own right.
That's fantastic.
A piece of history, yeah.
Oh, magic.
And there's a story I hear behind the bullet in the head, and I wonder how many people even noticed the bullet in the head.
Yeah, so if you look closely, on its forehead, there's a hole, and it is a bullet hole. And this comes from The Adventure of the Empty House, a very important Sherlock Holmes story. If you know anything about Sherlock, you know he was killed off halfway through the run when he fell down the Reichenbach Falls grappling with Moriarty. Now, Sherlock Holmes' fans were legion, and they wrote to Arthur Conan Doyle, the writer of those stories, to say, please don't kill off Sherlock, bring him back. So 5 or 6 years later, Conan Doyle was forced to bring Sherlock Holmes back against his own will, really. But he was such a popular character. And Sherlock came back in the story called The Adventure of the Empty House, where it's set 2 or 3 years after the Reichenbach Falls incident. And Sherlock is still pretending to be dead so he can get to the bottom of Moriarty's network of criminals. And he sets up in Baker Street a dummy of himself in the window because he's trying to lure out one of Moriarty's henchmen. and Moriarty's henchman comes along and shoots the rifle at this dummy, creating a hole in the head, and that's when Sherlock Holmes apprehends him. So that dummy in the display is supposed to be a dummy of Sherlock Holmes in that universe. It's not supposed to be Sherlock himself, which I think most people imagine it is.
So he was resurrected, a bit like 19th century Bobby Ewing.
Yeah, not in the shower though, in his study. But I think, whisper it quietly, but the dummy does look a little bit like Vladimir Putin. If you take a look next time you go past.
Oh, a little bit of politics.
Yeah.
I said to you yesterday when we were talking about this, that now that you've mentioned this Butin connection, I would not be able to unsee that. And sure enough, when I came up the stairs to meet you all today, I looked at that guy and said, that's Vladimir to the life.
Why, do you know him personally?
I feel like I do now. Good Vlad, my impairment.
You remember him from your Nam days, Tam.
Another thing about the location of this pub is that there was a Scotland Yard fairly close.
Well, that's true. Yeah. So Lestrade and the police officers that feature heavily in the Sherlock Holmes novels, who Sherlock Holmes always outwits, of course, were based just around the corner in Scotland Yard. Yes, on Whitehall.
And what's the story of the pub itself? As to the publican who said, I'm not just going to have a pub. I'm going to have a pub that's themed on Sherlock Holmes.
Do you know? I don't know. I don't think it's super old. I think it might be 60s, 70s sort of time. And it's clearly been a pub for a long time, this place.
Right.
But I don't know when it changed name to become the Sherlock Holmes. Maybe at the time when they got hold of the 1951 exhibition there in the corner.
Right.
Because we're on the site of Northumberland House here, of course.
Yeah.
Which was previously Suffolk House, and before that Northampton House.
It's moved around the
I was
counties.
looking at Wikipedia just on the stairs coming up. You know. No, built in 1605, and it had amazing gardens that ran down to the river, a prominent view, and it was next to York House, which had an amazing art collection. So it was and that was the last of the Strand houses to survive into the photographic era, and it was demolished in 1874.
Oh, wow.
And it had a lion on top of it that was really distinctive, and so people coming to Charing Cross, they'd say, I'll meet you below the lion.
Oh, how lovely.
And the lion now lives on Zion House in near where I live, in West London.
He's like a lion in Zion.
Yeah, he's a lion in Zion, and there are lots of other lions in this area because the Code Stone factory was almost directly opposite where we are. You know about Code Stone, don't you, Tam?
Not yet.
So it was
He's
a type of artificial stone that was developed in the late 18th century by Eleanor Code, I think her name was. She took over an existing business, and it became the most important and successful artificial stone manufacturer in late 18th and early 19th centuries. And so they exported, and all the different statues and things, you could make them at far cheaper cost than you could than employing a stonemason. And there were two prominent ones, and they were on the brewery, the Red Lion Brewery that was opposite us here, that was demolished for the Royal Festival Hall. And one of those ended up at the south end of Westminster Bridge, and the other is at Twickenham Rugby Ground.
Yeah, there's no stopping him once he gets going.
I was going to say, I think you need to appoint him to be the editor of your next publication of the Londonist. You've got, what, 10, 20 different stories in that one little anecdote?
Oh, no, not that many.
Am I right in saying, Jeff, that the recipe for Codestone went missing for a century or two, and someone recreated it 15, 20 years ago?
But they've never fully... I mean, you're the chemist, aren't you?
Yeah.
So,
recovering chemist.
I guess they've kind of retro-fitted it and figured out what the ingredients were.
Was that kind of concrete or something?
Yeah, it was a kind of artificial concretey cement type thing. And so it was mould. For casting, yeah. And so it brought down the cost of architectural features on buildings and things dramatically. I mean, they weren't the only ones to make it, but they were the most successful. She died in 1821.
Crikey.
Jeff's in the later stages of finishing off his book on the Strand, so he can't help himself. It just bubbles to the surface.
It's like a Tourette's type thing, yeah.
Where do you stand on the name of Strand versus the Strand?
Oh, don't.
This is a great pub conversation.
Oh, Strand. No
definite
Strand.
No definite article.
No definite article.
But that wasn't always the case, was it? Because you see Victorian newspapers usually call it the Strand.
Well, originally it was called Ackermannstrasse, Ackerman Street, because it was the road to Bath.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with the road of the same name, which is up near St Albans. And originally the Strand came down to Charing Cross, which of course meant turn in Anglo-Saxon, Shering, And before the cross, it was just a little hamlet of Shering, and then it turned north up essentially where Haymarket is and went along Piccadilly, and that was all the Strand.
So where did the article creep in and when?
It's unknown to history exactly when that was, Tam. In other words, none of us know for certain.
Well, surely it was when Brian Ferry and Roxy Music released Do the Strand. Surely that was when it came in.
I think it was a bit before then.
You
even before his time.
Do Strand.
Well,
you need something in there to fill the gap,
don't you?
Let's all
go down the Strand, have a banana.
It might have been
that's
that.
right, yeah.
Might have been that.
So maybe it was just the meter of the line. It needed to have the beat of the.
Well, you see, the has gone missing. It's not got it now. So,
Right.
But we don't know when.
Well, musical attention spans have reduced dramatically. People can't listen. Well, apparently people can listen to twice as many notes, but in less complex formations now. That's what
Really?
I read. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Does that sound familiar, Jeff?
It is. Everything is more complex for me now.
Would you like-
as the night draws in.
Why don't you have a
Say all of
nut?
us.
Have a nut, Jeff.
So, Matt, did this interest in Sherlock
Thank you.
Holmes develop independently of the London thing? It would have happened anyway, or London would have happened without Sherlock Holmes?
It's hard to piece it together now. I'd read Sherlock Holmes as a kid.
Yeah.
And I revisited it about 10 years ago when I was already doing the Londonist website, which is now 20 years old, by the way.
Is it 20
years
old
old.
now?
Yeah.
Maybe 20 years old today, eh?
Somewhere around this time.
Yeah.
Happy birthday,
Thank you.
Londonist.
Thank you. I'm looking
Cheers,
every
everyone.
Cheers.
every
Cheers
one of my
to the
20
Londonist.
years.
Oh, good. Right.
And I just thought, well, we've never written anything about Sherlock. What can I do? And I needed an excuse to reread all the stories. So I reread them all. As I went along, I noted down every single street and building that's mentioned across all the stories, and then made a map of it all. So, and the way I did it, I decided to map Baker Street and the Strand, but not map any streets or buildings that he doesn't mention. So you get this map of it, precisely what Conan Doyle puts into the stories and nothing else, and it gives you a real sense of where he goes with his imagination. I call it a geobibliome for pretentious reasons, but there isn't. I don't think anyone else has tried this before, so I needed to think of a word, and that's the. And then I did the same for Dickens. I read all 14 novels and short stories and mapped all that as well. So and then I had kids, so I got no time on my hands anymore. That was what I did before I had kids.
But you haven't given up on maps.
No, but you can't, can you? They're so fascinating. I mean, every day when I can't sleep, I'll get maps up on my phone and just browse. I mean, it's an addiction.
What's your favourite map?
Well, at the moment, it's this John Rocque map from 1746. It's the most detailed map up to that point of London, which mentions every alleyway, gives the names of nearly every alleyway. And it captures London at that beautiful moment where it's started to expand. The West End has started to be built, but it hasn't yet exploded in that Victorian rush of railways and suburbs. And so you still get fields in Bloomsbury, and Marylebone is mostly fields as well. So it's the city on the cusp of its expansion. And a project I've been working on recently is to take those maps, and it is a huge map. There are 24 panels. The whole thing will be several metres wide.
How long did it take him?
It took 3 or 4 years to put these maps together. They're properly surveyed. I think he had a team doing it. It wasn't just him. But they've always been in black and white, and because they're so hyper detailed, it's sometimes difficult to make out what's where and what's what. So one day I was sat there colouring in some Paw Patrol with my 5-year-old, a Paw Patrol colouring book, and I thought, why don't I apply this to something more grown up than Paw Patrol? And so I took my son, actually, my 5-year-old, we sat down in the computer and we started colouring in this map together, the John Rocque map from 1746. And I thought there's something in this, because I started colouring in the buildings and the rivers and the parks, and the colour really lets the detail pop out.
Did you have a system for what colours you used for what?
I just used what looked attractive, I guess. There are sort of standards. So typically buildings were coloured in red on all maps, and obviously rivers in blue and green spaces in green. So that pretty much set the palette. And I just found shades of those colours that work well together. And I've been doing that for about half a year now, and I've done 4.5 of those panels out of 24. Each one takes about 30 hours work to do. But it's such a wonderful thing to spend such time with this work of craftsmanship, which is the John Rocque map. It's a great work of the surveyor's art and the artist's art all brought together, and so it's a privilege to... I probably spent more time with those maps than PhD students have spent with them, because I'm intricately colouring in even trees and rivers and things, so it's hyper detailed.
Well, what has that done to your relationship with London through that map?
It has given me fresh insights. I can see where like the boundaries of London used to be a lot clearer, and you walk those streets now and you can still feel that to some degree, and these bits are slightly newer than those bits. But also the rivers in particular are fascinating. If you look at Southwark, Borough and Rotherhithe, Bermondsey, those areas always used to be very marshy traditionally. In Roman times they would be underwater during high tide, and they continued in that state until relatively recent times. And if you look on the John Rocque map, you can see lots and lots of drainage ditches, irrigation channels, streams, rivers. They're not that apparent in the black and white version. Only when I started to colour them in I saw how many there were. And then something you can do, because I'm doing it in Photoshop, I'm doing it on different layers, different coloured layers, so houses on one layer, trees on another, parks on another, rivers on another. You can turn off different layers. Yep. So I can have just the black and white map with just the rivers showing. And then I can get a modern map, superimpose it over the top, and see how the modern street plan follows those old drainage ditches. And you do find correlations. Rupel Street, that remarkable Victorian street behind Waterloo Station. So it's on lots of films are set there because it's one of those pristine Victorian streets. Yeah. The alignment of that and its neighbouring streets very much follows a series of drainage ditches which were there before Rupel Street. Right. And I haven't definitively proved it, but quite likely the developer of the land just followed the lines that the ditches had gone in. And so I'm finding out bits of history just by colouring maps in, which is an interesting way to go about it.
Just a quick detailed question for you. After we spoke yesterday, and I'd pronounced Rocque or something following some Shakespearean model for Queus. But so then I troubled to go onto YouTube and find other people talking, and some people say Roque.
Yep.
How did you settle that on Rocque?
I don't know if there is a definitive, as another London historian, Perilyn historians, do you have a view? I've always said Rocque.
Well, he was a Huguenot, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So there he was Rocque.
Well, he might have been
Say that again,
Rocque.
But would he not have wanted to anglicise it to fit
It's the
in?
shrug that makes it, eh?
I'd have said Roque. That's me.
Right.
Say it again, Jeff.
Rocque.
Well, as a northerner, I'd say Rocque.
Rocque. Okay, well, as long as we all say it the same way, I guess.
I have two favourites. There's Richard Hallwood's map. Now, Hallwood was late 18th century, 1790s. So that was a similarly detailed one, and I think it was either the first or one of the first maps that had road house numbers on it, which was really interesting, because I suppose the question that I have, which I haven't got an answer to, which I'm hoping that somebody around this timetable will answer, when did building numbers first come in?
Oh, that's a great question, isn't it?
What year is the map you're talking about?
It was published in sections and so on, a bit like Rocque's map. And so...
When?
About 1793 to 97, that kind of...
Does that predate the Royal Mail, then?
Well, the Royal Mail would, yeah, I mean... Well, do we know the answer?
It would have been a Georgian innovation. I do know that the fanlights above doors, those kind of patterned windows above doors, they were built in different shapes and styles, so that before numbers, you could say go to the house with the fan shape like this. So I think that would have then, because that's unwieldy, because there's 40 houses down the street and you've got to look out for a particular symbol.
Yeah.
Then door numbers would have come in shortly after that.
They look like the sign of the peacock, and they say, I'll meet you at the sign of the peacock or whatever.
Well, that's growing up with sort of mass speculative building then as well, isn't it? I mean, that's very much of its period.
I think it might have even been as early as when, terracing first came in after the Great Fire, didn't it?
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons, terraced
Did
houses.
it?
Yeah. And...
or at scale.
At scale, yeah. So sometime in the mid-18th century, I would have thought.
That would be my guess. I think I may have read something about the changeover from the signs, as we were saying, the sign of the bear, the sign of the peacock, whatever. And there was actually a story of somebody walking down the street and having a sign fall on their head.
Yeah, that's right. Wasn't that during Charles II's time? I think
it may be, yeah.
And they stopped doing signs shortly after that.
And without the signs, they needed something, so some bright spark said numbers, something like that.
That's health and safety gone mad, isn't it? Health and safety. Just think of all the lovely signs we could still have, Geoff.
I know.
What sign would you have over your door?
Sign of the times.
That's a good one.
Oh, that's rough.
We have breaking news from our producer. If anyone knows the answer to this question that we're all struggling with, they can write in.
Oh, please write in.
And let us know. I think we've possibly come close to it with the falling sign and the numbers.
It's the kind of thing that might be in Notes and Queries, which was a wonderful tome, wasn't it? A wonderful journal. Notes and Queries from the 19th century. Well, it's still going today, isn't it? Where people write in and they say, I'd like to know the answer to why tabletops are the shape that they are or something, and then you'll get 50 people writing back and giving different answers.
Mostly, why don't you try Google?
Well, yeah.
Or Wikipedia on the stairs.
Well, quite.
You know.
Yeah.
Or buy yourself a new round and move on to something interesting.
But I think my favourite one is the Wenceslas Holler's maps.
Oh, right.
Which were bird's eye perspectives, a lot of them. And absolutely wonderful.
What year was that?
Well, Wenceslas Holler was he was the Earl of Arundel's man, and then he operated throughout the Civil War and then into the Restoration period, and he became the royal scenographer to Charles II, and so he produced maps and engravings in lots of different books including one of the few representations that we have of the medieval St Paul's Cathedral.
Yeah.
Indeed,
before the fire.
He did a panorama of before and after the Great Fire, side by side, so you can see how it changed between the two types. And you can see all the rubble in the city. It's the only view we've really got of the whole city.
Isn't that a big feature of the Rocque map as well? That you mentioned Holler and the bird's eye view and so on. None of these guys had birds. They didn't have drones.
They went up the top of Church Tower. So Wenceslas Holler went to the top of what is now Southwark Cathedral. Because one of our colleagues on a Shakespeare project that we've been involved in had actually done measurements replicating the long view of London, which Holler did in 1647, of the Thames and showing the north bank of the Thames. And he lined up where the Globe Theatre, essentially, and compared it with the replica Globe Theatre and discovered that actually the original Globe Theatre was 1/10 smaller. They got it wrong. It was actually smaller than the current one.
So
all through triangulation and trigonometry and everything, and he was a very accurate draftsman.
Yeah.
Gracious.
It's a pardonable mistake, though, isn't it? When you consider the amount of getting wrong you can do when you're trying to say, I can't draw it from here. I've got to draw it as if I were over there, even though I'm here. And that's the thing that strikes me all the time when I look at the map that you're working on.
We had balloon maps. They came in a little bit later, didn't they? After, I suppose, the early 19th century, late 18th, early 19th century.
What was that beautiful panorama they found a few decades ago? It was on the inside of a beer barrel or something, wasn't it? It was the Rhinebeck panorama, and that was done from a balloon. And it's one of these lost images of London that somebody rediscovered in an attic or something a few decades ago.
Wow,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
No, I wonder where it is now.
I can't remember. It's something in the back of my head. But quite detailed, and I think it's from an observation balloon.
That's incredible, yeah.
Well, the very earliest known map of London, the so-called copperplate map, which we only have 3 panels of a possible 20 or so, that was produced in the 1550s, so the Tudor period. And that was produced by Flemish artists, we think. Because on the back of so these are etched onto copper plates, and on the back of those copper plates are beautiful Flemish paintings. So the discarded plates, which would have been used for printing the maps, have been recycled for the artists' canvases. And these maps went missing for centuries and were only rediscovered from the 60s onwards. And still only 3 of them have been found. So there's probably another 18 or so out there. So if you've got a Flemish masterpiece in your attic,
flip it over,
you might have a valuable historical document.
That's fabulous. How lovely.
There must be quite a few stories on the Londonist about the treasures in people's attics and how much of our history is actually buried in attics.
Zero. I think we've got no articles on that kind of thing. But
Oh God, I spent my entire career doing that.
That's Jeff's life.
Garages, attics. I've been everywhere.
Dusty corners.
Oh goodness me, yeah, everywhere. I've
Cellars.
been every. Oh yeah, cellars,
Dirty
all
cellars.
over. I've been everywhere looking, and you come across some amazing things. You really do.
What's the most amazing thing you've ever found rootling around in somebody's cellar, Jeff?
That's a tough one. Yeah, I'll come back to that. Carry
All
on
right,
talking, and
we'll
another thing.
revisit this.
Yeah.
We'll revisit it.
I did once get to root around in somebody's warehouse, an amazing warehouse out in West London. If you've ever gone along the Great West Road, you see that Vanguard building that's usually got an aircraft on top of it.
Yes.
The guys who run that, Vanguard, they used to be in the haulage business, so they'd be paid to come in and lift heavy machinery out of buildings and take it away from the 60s onwards. And they've kept virtually all of the stuff they took away that people didn't want. So in their warehouse, they've got military planes. They've got the largest advertising poster ever made.
What was that for?
It's for Michael Jackson's O2 concerts, which never happened because he died. But they'd made this huge tarpaulin poster that would have been draped over the O2, or the Millennium Dome, as it's probably called back then.
Wow.
And it was never used, and it's still sat in their warehouse. And they've got the old statues and things from Leicester Square, or the plinths that the statues used to stand on. That's in their warehouse. All kinds of things over there. It's a very little known warehouse in West London.
Oh, they sound fantastic. Oh, I'd love to have a poke around in there.
Remarkable company, and they also facilitated the very first Thames Festival tightrope walk across the Thames back in, I think it was the late 70s, early 80s. A guy
Amazing.
walked pretty much where Millennium Bridge is now. A tightrope was strung between buildings on either side. Guy walked across.
So this is actually an institution which has institutionalized the sort of random, we'll put this away for a rainy day type of thing. And when somebody says to them, what are you ever going to use that Michael Jackson tarpaulin for? What do they say?
They're just
Who knows?
as far as I know, they don't have a plan. They're just keeping it safe for posterity, I guess.
Crikey.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Tam MacDonald, your host. If you're enjoying TimeTable London, then please tell your friends about us by sending them a link to the show, giving us a mention on social media, or even especially by chatting about us in the pub. TimeTable London, for everything you love about the world's greatest city.
There's a new archive I went to look around recently in Old Street, an archive of ephemera. There's a guy there, he runs Global Street Art, the guys who put the big murals up all over London. And he's made so much money from doing that he's now amassing an archive of ephemera. And he's collecting everything from like vintage tube maps to theatre posters, just flyers that are handed out. And the collection's up to something like 10,000 items now. And it's not advertised or anything, it's just in his basement. But he's got it all professionally laid out and everything.
Where is that in Old Street?
So, I forgot the name of it. I used to work on the same road and I forgot the name of it. Tabernacle Street. There's a kind of very modern building there, but he's got the whole basement for his street art workshops. And it's built into that. But he's got it built to industry standard and everything.
Wow, I didn't know that.
But that's London for you. That's layers and layers of detritus and debris and discarded stuff. My father used to take... every Sunday. I asked him the other day, I said, what time did we used to get up? 6 a.m. when I was about 7 or 8 years old, 6 a.m. He'd drag me and my brother out of bed on a Sunday morning to go down Petticoat Lane and rummage through all the detritus that the pavement sellers had, and everything you could imagine was there.
Oh, I bet.
Are you a London boy yourself, Matt?
No, can't you tell the northern accent?
No,
I'm from Grimsby on the east coast,
Right.
north of the Broads, quite a long way. But I've been down here 26 years, so I've got a weird hybrid accent that goes all over the place. And the one word I can't pronounce the southern way is London, unfortunately, given my profession. I have to say London, the northern way, and bus.
And bus.
Bus.
You're among friends here, Matt. Don't worry.
I do try. I try and say Bass and Landon, and I end up sounding like Dick Van Dyke.
So what's the connection between Grimsby and London?
Well, I've got a direct one, actually. My ancestors were from Bermondsey, down here, and they moved to Barking for the fishing trade. And then when the docks started closing and the strikes were happening in the 1880s, they moved up to Grimsby, which became the biggest fishing port in Europe at one stage. So they followed the fish, basically. And so I've come back to where my ancestors are from all those years later.
Yeah, you returned to source, like a salmon.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And spawned here and had 2 children. Born in Barnet Hospital, so they just about count.
Weren't they called silver darlings? The
My children, no.
No, the herring.
So after all of this Londoning, can you still go home? Do people see you as gone over to the dark side?
I just have a great time when I go back to Grimsby. It's a very different town, of course.
Yeah.
Very, I don't know. There are no big towns nearby, so it's, even though it's a port, it's isolated and it's a different feel. You don't get so much cultural background from different parts of the world and things there. It's kind of fairly homogenous, working middle class white people.
Matt, I want to know how you went from being a chemist to the author of all these books, this authority on all these maps, this enthusiast for London. What happened?
I kind of like to know that as well. I don't, it's just that, serendipity. You just do things.
You were gripped by something, obviously.
I think it's like the scientist's brain. You get obsessed with things. You want to record everything in detail and map it out. And I guess London became my experiment. I was working in science publishing, and so I got bored of editing other people's words and started doing science journalism instead, which is good fun, and that led to writing other things. And then I saw this Londonist website 20 years ago almost. It had just been set up by somebody else, and said, can I have a go at writing for that, because I was already in love with the city. And not been able to quit since. So.
Well, you just followed your nose, just followed your passion.
Yeah. Well, it started out as a hobby, and we did it just as blogs were massive 20 years ago. It was like the next cool thing, and we just did it as a hobby. Didn't even think about turning it into a business for 4 or 5 years. So we were fitting it in around work. And it was only about 2010, 2011, we thought, hang on, we've got enough readers here, we could start putting advertising up and doing sponsored articles and stuff, and we turned it into a business, and now I get employed to sit around doing things like this and exploring London.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah.
So with all of these books and articles and Londonist and the rest of it, what's your next book after your latest book?
So I had one out last year which was called the Atlas of Imagined Cities, which was mapping fictional characters to 18 world cities, including
wonderful.
London. So we had 5,000 or 6,000 characters and fictional businesses and fictional rivers and whatever, mapping them to different cities. And so that was the last one. The next one out next year, it will be the 60th anniversary of Greater London and the 32 boroughs. So I've made another atlas of the 32 boroughs with a friend who's more of an illustrator than me. He's made maps of each borough, and I'm writing the text to go alongside them, a kind of history of each one and things to see in each one, to come out middle of next year.
Oh, fabulous.
What's your favourite borough?
Well, I'm going to duck the question and say the City of London, which isn't technically a borough. But
don't say Hounslow, whatever you do.
It's like choosing amongst your favourite children, Geoff. It's like that every borough has its charms. I think I'm enchanted by Havering, actually, because it's the one no one ever thinks of. And it's really ancient. I mean, it's got Tudor history. It goes back to the conquest, actually. I think even Edward the Confessor had a palace there. So, Havering's got this huge history, and it's just still a series of isolated villages pretty much surrounding Romford, and that's it. I mean, it's a difficult one to get to know because it's quite spaced out.
What about Harrow?
Has its charms. I think Harrow on the Hill is a very lovely...
Well, it's very ancient, isn't it, Harrow on the Hill? And Grimsdyke, have you ever been to Grimsdyke?
Yes, yeah.
Because that used to be W.S. Gilbert's house, and that's where he drowned.
Right.
And
Yes.
But do you know the interesting fact about that is there were 3 witnesses to that drowning. The 2 girls who Gilbert was swimming with, slightly suspiciously anyway, but the third one was Charles II. The statue of Charles II that's now in Soho Square originally stood in Grimsdyke's Lake.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, actually, originally it stood in Soho Square, then it was moved to Grimsdyke, and then it came back again to Soho Square. So that statue in Soho Square witnessed the death of W.S. Gilbert.
my father was there after the war.
I thought you were going to say there at the drowning.
No, I'm not quite that old. No, he was he had TB, and it was a TB sanatorium. And so he was there doing occupational therapy and learning woodwork and all the rest of it, and spending a lot of time in the open air, which was obviously a treatment. And so that whole side of it still exists in the woods, the very creepy woods.
They are, aren't they? And
They're haunted.
It's just little passages, and not passages, like tracks going off through the woods, and you don't know where you're going.
Because it's the boundary. It's a boundary between, Grimm's Dyke, it's the Devil's Dyke, isn't it, originally? So there's a deeper meaning to it.
Yeah.
Far deeper meaning to it. So I think Harrow has to be high up there. Tam, what's your favourite borough?
Well, as you mentioned Harrow, I've got a pretty fond memory of living up on the hill myself in what used to be, well, still is, Ferrier's house. It actually had the ovens from the 15th century Ferrier built into the side of the hillside. Wow. And I looked out of this my study at the front of this house, didn't have a 90-degree angle in it, and it looked out towards St. Mary's Church. So what you're looking at is something that would have been there to look at out of that same window. 600 years ago, was it 700 years ago the church was consecrated? Right. Something like that. That's a fabulous little village to be walking around and living in Ferrier's house with these. One was the back. We used it for the barbecue. Then there was the snug in the kitchen, and then there was the utilities room off the garage. 3 Ferrier's ovens.
Are they still there? Or is that?
Last time I looked, it's 2 West Street. For those of you that want to Google it on Google Maps.
All right, but that was back in about 1920, wasn't it, Tam? Yeah.
You're determined to age me backwards. I've gone from Vietnam back to 1920s.
Sorry about that.
Did you ever have W.S. Gilbert round?
well, exactly. And we'll all head off to the Crimea after this.
Sorry. And Jess, what's your favourite borough?
Oh, I don't know. I'm a very metropolitan girl, as you know, born within the city. Well, I guess born in the city of London. I think Finsbury, and Finsbury is, defunct. It's redundant. It no longer exists, of course. Yeah. So Finsbury's been subsumed into Islington. But I'm a Finsbury girl. I grew up in Finsbury, and I think of it as Finsbury. And in the 20s, it was known as the People's Republic of Finsbury because they had a lot of communist councillors. They really liked Lenin. They really liked Lenin in Finsbury, and just a fascinating area. Some of the earliest council-built social housing, so council-built as opposed to charities, council-built social housing in the country. An area that used to have lots of light industry in it because it was just outside the city walls, of course. My dad worked in a lift factory. There was loads of printing. There was Gordon's Gin. Oh, just marvellous. Oh, my father had this wonderful story when he worked in the lift factory. There was the cleaner. The cleaner also worked at Gordon's Gin, and which, as you know, was just down the road in Clerkenwell. And one day, one of the vats burst at Gordon's Gin. One of the vats burst, and he reckons that everyone was on their hands and knees with everything absorbent they could possibly find. Every rag, every piece of clothing, soaking up this gin, wringing it out, keeping it for later. Lovely.
For personal consumption or for the good of the company?
I think it was for personal consumption. He was always half cut from what I heard. But that's the people of Finsbury.
And then he moved into lifts, which I guess had its ups and downs. Sorry.
Bloody hell. That's rough. That's rough.
I think that's one of the things that's missing about London now is that mix of residential and manufacturing and warehouse. Mm-hmm. It would all be in the same street. You'd have all these activities and it's all sort of been zoned, and now it's very soulless in that sense, and I want it all mixed up together again.
I've got to admit, I find Finsbury and Clerkenwell pretty soulless now. So the lift factory that my dad used to work in has been a very fancy graphic design studio for many years. There used to be a pub opposite. That's been a supermarket for ages. The Gordon's Gin factory, those are all apartments now. It used to be in the 80s that my dad could come home from work for half an hour to watch the Magic Roundabout, and then he'd go back to work again, finish off his shift. Could come home to work. Everything was local. I remember my earliest memory ever as being in my pram on Exmouth Market, and I remember my mum trying to get the pram up onto the curb. Actually, it might have been. Well, anyway, I remember being in my pram, and there was the butcher shop and the grocer shop, and all the bookstalls, that had been there for donkey's yonks since the beginning of Exmouth Market. And it was all of that coming together of working people, that curious mix of residential, a lot of working class people, a lot of sort of improvement schemes that happened in the 20s and 30s, all of that social housing. Anyway,
and then they built the park, which is like 4 miles away. Finsbury Park was for the people of Finsbury.
Yeah,
but
is that why?
Yeah,
it's
it
called?
was
I've always
for them.
wondered.
But that was the best they could do.
Why don't you just hop on the number 19 or 38? Or 19, really. Hop on the 19.
What's your earliest memory?
Well, this is Giles Brandreth's podcast, isn't it? The Rosebud podcast. He goes into earliest memories in that. It's a very good podcast. My earliest memory, I think, is being in a pram again. Yeah, I remember looking up at the sky and there was this very distinctive water tower in Grimsby. I do remember seeing it from a pram eye view.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
How old were you?
Well, pram age, so I don't know. Maybe as late as 2, I don't know.
12.
Those big Victorian prams.
What about your earliest memory of London?
Well, Crystal Palace Park, strangely. So my dad's best mate, even though we were up in Grimsby, his best mate lived in Croydon. So we would come down now and then to visit him. And I do remember being taken to Crystal Palace Park. And there was a very dangerous adventure playground there, which I do remember very well. It's a multicoloured wooden thing that went very high with no safety. It was probably tarmac.
Those were the days.
Yeah. I still remember the way across the different bits of wood. I must have been 6 or 7.
Alligators underneath it as well.
Pretty much, yeah.
Snapping.
Well, yeah, the dinosaurs from the Crystal Palace Lake, yeah.
Magic.
So Finsbury, to go full circle, go back to ballooning, it was where the first aerial ascent in the country happened.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Vincenzo Lunardi in the 18th century.
Well, we had a huge Italian population, of course.
Maybe that's part of the
Amazing.
It was from the Honourable Artillery Company's grounds, which are still there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the 1780s, I want to say, somewhere around there, just behind Bunhill Fields there, the very first human ascent in the whole of the kingdom.
They've got a great archive. Honourable Artillery
HEC.
Company.
It's an amazing place, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. I've been to hundreds of archives in London, as you know. There's some. I've got stories to tell. That'll have to wait for another time. Yeah.
Next time.
Has that archive been digitised?
Only partly. No. Digitisation isn't a panacea, Tam.
It's not.
I'm not regarding it as a panacea. I'm just wondering.
I like the physicality of archives and the paper and touching them and feeling them and smelling them above all else.
And
Tasting.
accidentally
Licking
snapping
them.
bits off.
That's the first thing I do when I visit somebody's home or warehouse or redundant place, is to open up a box that's to smell it, to see. It gives me a sense of the state of decay.
So that's what you were doing when you came around to our place for dinner.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Can you determine individual bacterial spores, fungal spores from the smell and the palate?
Not quite. No, I haven't. The genetic engineering hasn't advanced that far yet. But no, I can tell when, obviously, when photographic negatives are going off. That's simply
I
the
like
vinegar.
that smell.
The vinegar syndrome. Yeah. Oh God, yeah. And of course, it's contagious vinegar syndrome, which is something that a lot of people don't. And there are specialist boxes that you can buy to isolate your negatives so that the vinegar syndrome doesn't contaminate other
I've never heard
pictures.
of vinegar syndrome. So it's the things degrading and turning
into acetic acid. Yeah. And so open up a
because
box.
it's acetate, isn't it? So it's reacting with oxygen. This is the chemist in me coming back there. Yeah, acetate plus oxygen will make acetic acid.
That's right. And so you open up a box and it's that, I smell that. I know there's a problem here. And so then you have to roll into action and deal with it. And of course, we're only about a few hundred yards, a quarter of a mile from where the main vinegar manufactories were. Distilleries. There were main distilleries were on the South Bank. It was renowned for
one of the
vinegar.
best things in the John Rocque map in Finsbury is Mr. Wittenoom's vinegar factory.
Wittenoom.
Mr. Wittenoom. I think
Wittenoom.
it's called Mr. Wittenoom's vinegar factory on the map.
Of course, you couldn't have done that within the city, could you? Because it was all those noxious, smelly, stinky, poisonous things which pushed just outside. Oh, lovely.
So when can we expect your latest book next year?
I think it's summertime, like June, July sort of time. Yeah. June, July 2025.
Excellent.
Well, we'll be here at TimeTable rooting you on.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us today.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Hasn't it been?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you and cheers.
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 Oh, you've gone dry.
Yeah, I've been waiting for the second pint for ages.
Cheeky.
Same again.
Oh, I was joking, but yes.
Well, while Geoff and Matt go off and order the other half, there's just time to remind our listener of the 2 questions our distinguished cast couldn't answer. When did building numbers come in? And what happened to the Rhinebeck panorama, and where is it now? Okay, 3 questions. If you know the answer to either of those, please do write in and let us know, and we'll read it out next time. Cheers! Join us next time when we will be coming to you from the Edgar Wallace pub in Essex Street, off Strand. Famous really in 2 ways, not just for Fleet Street's most famous journalist, but also for Dr. Samuel Johnson himself. And our guest will be Katie Wignall, London Blue Badge Guide, blogger and founder of Look Up London Walking Tours.